Saw ourselves as more of a death metal band, but we knew that we had a ton of elements of the Swedish scene and things like that. But then we also had a little bit of the hardcore thing going on, which was cool because we could tour with like a Cannibal Corpse, but then tour with an As I Lay Dying. And it was like pretty cool that we were able to do that in those kind of tours and kind of mix it up a bit. That HXC MP3, yeah. And I remember when we first got on that, dude, and we were like on the front page, I thought I made it. And I was like, dude, this is so sick. And I remember All Shall Perish being on there. I was just blown away by that band because they were very brutal death metal, but had these hardcore parts too. I kind of was like, that's kind of what I want to go and do. Cannibal Corpse, seeing them every day, that was like, am I real? Like, is this happening? Like, I'm done. Like, we could do this tour and we're good.
Real quick before we start, I just wanted to mention that we do these podcast recordings live on stream. We stream every single Wednesday at 6 p.m. EST on Twitch. It's an opportunity for you guys to come hang out, interact, and ask your questions directly to all of our guests. We also have a Discord if you want to keep talking more about deathcore and metalcore, or simply to keep up with everything that we're doing, upcoming guests, and all that jazz. I'll leave links to both of these things in the description wherever you are watching or listening. And with that out of the way, please enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Brutality Podcast. My name is Dom. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Yan. Yan, how are you doing?
I'm doing super great. What about you?
I'm doing awesome, because today we have a very special guest. I'm super excited about this one. We have the one, the only, Justin Longshore of Through the Eyes of the Dead. Welcome to the show, man. How you doing, dude?
Good. How you guys doing?
Yeah, doing fucking awesome, man. Thank you for taking the time to do this, man.
Thanks for having me. Stoked on this.
Hell yeah.
We're super stoked. We have a real OG in the spot here, like doing it since forever. I don't want to make you sound old, but you've been around for a while, my friend.
It's known, so it's all good, man.
All
I
right.
mean, yeah, we just did our 20-year anniversary tour last year.
Yeah,
so we're now past that.
That's
Look, I
awesome,
mean,
though.
you're still able to play, so I mean, there's something, right?
Back probably hurts a little bit, but I'm
It always has, so
Yep,
it's all good.
Yeah.
All those nights in the van, that'll do it to you. But yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's really awesome still being able to get out there and do this because it's funny. Our last show that we played recently in March, it was in
Aura
Aura Festival, and that was in Georgia. And I remember when we got asked to play, I started thinking like, obviously, yeah, that would be really cool. But I started thinking like, that's right when I turned 40. My birthday's in February. So I remember when I first started this band, I was like, well, I might as well, get it out of the way and start touring, because I was right out of high school. So I was like, I might as well just get this out of the way because I'm not going to be 40 years old, playing death metal.
Wow.
So I was like, I have to do this now. Like, I mean...
Yeah, I mean, but that's awesome, though. I mean, we're talking 20 years. Like, how many people? Because the reality, like, the more we do what we do right now, and with my YouTube channel and stuff like that, it's as much as touring sounds awesome, it's also extremely difficult, and like the conditions and all that. Like, you need to grind and stuff like that. So 20 years, it's It's a lot.
It's dedication, that's for sure.
Yes, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, for some reason I keep coming back.
So, a real masochist.
Yeah, it's like every time. I mean, there's been plenty of times where we're ready to hang it up. We've been on hiatus, things like that. But it was like we just couldn't commit to just completely stopping. And I feel like I'm easy to like, I guess, some of the other guys are just kind of like, come on, man, let's just give it one more run. And it's like, all right,
easily
man, fuck it,
convinced.
let's go.
Yeah, because like the more, I'm talking with people, like it's the same thing. Like they say like, you're exhausted, you're in a van, it's not easy. But the second you go on stage and you connect with people, or you go at the merch table and you talk with people, it's almost like you forget that part and makes it work. And that's what we're hearing a lot, doing this. So from what I'm hearing it sounds like that as well, right? Like, let's do that one more time. Then you do it, you have a blast, and you're like, well, maybe another time or two.
We jammed to make the set work. Might as well play a few more shows.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know. Like from what you just said, I mean, that is exactly it. 100%. People, I mean, I've had, like random odd jobs here and there, and I've hung out with people, and they're like, oh, he's so quiet. I've gotten that my entire life. But like those same people, when they see me like on stage, it's like, I never expected that. Like, what's going on with you? Like, what happened to this like really quiet, nice, like, now he's just shredding, death metal. Like, what's going on? And
screaming at the crowd.
yeah, so I feel like I'm like out of body almost. It's like an out of body experience on stage. And it's almost like I feel like it's my home. But it's just so tough to do it 9 months out of the year, especially as we get older. So, we still try to keep it alive as much as possible, but also, having families at home, things like that. But yeah, I mean, I think, I've dealt with, depression, anxiety, the whole nine, like most people, mental health issues. And like, but once I'm on that stage, like, everything is just gone, and it's just like me and the crowd and my bandmates, and like there's just some kind of energy there that I just can't get anywhere else. No drugs, alcohol, nothing can really replace that. So that's that's where I'm at with that, and that's why I guess I keep coming back.
And it's awesome because, like, would it be like a fair statement to say that, like, when you go on stage and you can really just do whatever you want, be as crazy as you want to be, like, it's probably also allowing you to be at peace. Like, I know you mentioned anxiety, and I'm extremely anxious as a person. So I can feel you on that. But what I mean is that you mentioned people are telling you, hey, you're calm, you're quiet, and then you go on stage. Like, do you think the fact that you can just go and do that is allowing you to be like that, as a, like, you know what I mean? Like, to be more calm on the other aspect of your life? Or
yeah, I think so. It's just such a release. I think that, you have all this stuff that kind of builds, and, if you're getting anxious, and, you kind of compartmentalize things. I think that, everyone has their own way of coping with that. And I guess that's mine. And it just sucks because it's normally like only 30 to 45 minutes for the set. And then it's like, all right, it's over. Now we have to load out and do all the, like, the not so fun stuff, but it's worth it. That energy and it just, I don't know. It's just such a release.
yeah, and also when you, I guess, like, you're whatever, like, you're at the merch table, you're packing up or whatever, and there's someone who's telling you that you changed their freaking life and stuff like that. Like, that's I guess it's another way of just like, oh wow, like, it's
I don't know. It always baffles me, and especially to this day. I mean, when we were touring, nonstop, full length, album cycles, 9 months out of the year, like I mentioned, I guess we got that often, but I guess it was kind of expected. If you're on tour that much, and it's a handful of people like you're gonna get that. But like,
proportionally makes sense. I mean,
but hearing it now, like when we're like 10, 15 shows a year maybe, and to still hear that is like, I can't really, like, it's like I don't believe it when they tell me. It's like, no, like, are you sure? I mean, I just had, someone, one of our fans send like a tattoo that he just got, of a design that I randomly was thinking like, hey, I want to bring that old merch design back. So I did that this year, and we brought that design back on this last, the festival date. And then now he has the tattoo, and I'm like, holy shit, like, people actually still really like us, and it's it's weird to me, but it's really awesome and humbling at the same time. Like, I don't know. I guess because being a musician, I have this like, where we always like strive to be something, and we always think our stuff sucks, and and then you hear that and it's like reassuring, because it's like, oh, okay, like I guess I can still continue to do the things that I do, and it's fine, and at least this person likes it, so I'll keep going.
I mean, just to reassure you a little bit more, on my YouTube channel, I'm kind of documenting the MySpace era. That's kind of what I do. Like, I'm talking about Suicide Silence, all those bands. You have no ideas how many times people have been asking
the
for
names in there a lot. Yeah.
Every comment, everything. Like, I'm like, yes, I'm gonna do it. Like, don't worry, I'm gonna do a video about them. But like, you guys have like a strong cult, like loving following or something. Like these people, like they're like, please do like every video I'm making. Like, there's never been one video that at least one comment is not mentioning you guys. So I think you're also very much respected because you've been around since the early days. Like, I remember you were in every top 8s on MySpace. Like, it's like everywhere. Like, I was every flyer. You were working hard, man. Like, always on tour, everybody. So like, there's definitely, and Dom can attest to that. Like, there's definitely a big respect in the community.
Definitely
for you guys. Like, I know it's hard to see from within the band or in insider perspective, but I can tell you right now, as like a fan, of somebody who's seeing the community and stuff like that, like, you're very much respected and beloved in the deathcore community. Just wanted to.
That's really cool and really great to hear, and we should play more shows, I guess. So
people are going to be there.
Yeah, and it's cool because like when we did our 20-year run last year, we did it with Warforged and Tracheotomy, and it was very successful, way more successful than I had imagined, and it was a lot of Midwest shows. Like, we went over to like Chicago, and then we went down through Kansas and Texas.
Because you guys were doing it with Oceano, that must have been kind of like oh shit, they're not on this anymore. What's this tour going to be like? Especially playing in their markets, like Chicago, for example.
Exactly. And we were like, oh, well, I guess we're going to still do it. And, everything is just ready to go, and we'll do the best we can. And if there's 5 people at the show, that's cool. We're going to have fun, and it's going to be awesome. So, we did that. And then it was like, we had to order merch like 3 different times on that run. And it was like,
wow.
Yeah, fans were relentless over it, and it was like, man, like I said, we just got to start playing more shows. This is just wild. So now we're writing a record, to start doing things like that again.
Yeah. That's so super cool though. Yeah, that's super cool to hear. I hadn't really seen much feedback from that run actually, so I'm glad to hear that run actually went well, despite the original like lineup not being the same and all that. And
it's always a bummer when something like that happened. You're like, oh my god, do we still? But I think I could be wrong, but I think when fans are noticing something like that and they see that the band still go on and do it for them, like, I feel like there's an appreciation for that. At least that's how I would feel. Like, if one of the band is not there, I would be like, oh, okay, so they won't come in. And then they're like, oh no, they're still doing it. I would go and I would be like, I'm gonna show to them that it was worth it. So I feel like it might be part of it.
Yeah, and I had the mentality that most of the promoters would actually pull out of the whole thing. We had one date where the promoter decided not to do it. So one out of however many dates, I think we did like 2 weeks or something. So that was really cool. And I don't know, since day one with this band, I was just like, I'm not wasting my time. I'm going to be relentless. When we're doing something, we're going to do it. And like I said, if there's 5 people there or 2,000, like, we're going to do this no matter what. I've had, vans like catch on fire and still make it to the show the same day, like with a new van. Wow. We've been through a hell of a lot. But literally, like I said, I was just, that was like my goal when I was like, if I'm doing this, I'm doing this. I'm not going to school. I'm just gonna, shred on tour and and we'll go from there. And yeah, I mean, I hate letting people down. I think that's a big thing for me as well. As a person, I just don't like letting people down. I've always just taken that with, the band's career too. So we've rarely canceled anything. So and I think that's super important because a lot of people, just want to get out there, and if something happens that's, not popular, they're just really quick to give up. But you can tell like the bands that have cemented themselves, why they are still around, and it's because they have that mentality, that real like workhorse mentality. And I think that makes a big difference.
I think it's also part of what I was talking about, like being beloved and respected and stuff like that. Like there's definitely a part of that. Like people want to give. I know, because I feel like that with a lot of bands. Like I want to give back. Like I want to buy some merch. Like I always tell that story, but like I went to see Of Sulfur, and I'm a big fan of Ricky Hoover and what he did with Suffocate and stuff like that. Like super awesome. And I've bought a shirt that I'm never going to wear in my life. Like there's like, like it's too large. I don't like personally the design, but I really just wanted to support. So I'm like, I'm going to buy it anyway. Yeah. So it creates this feeling.
There were a bunch of t-shirts that he liked and that were his size, just to be clear. He just decided to buy the one that didn't fit.
No, that would be weird. No. That was my only option, just to make that clear. But even the guy asked me, like, are you sure? Like, I was like, yeah, it's okay. Because he saw my face. Like, he saw, my face when I started design. He's like, you don't have to, man. I'm like, no, it's okay. So
I got to see this design now.
It's like I think I have it, but like it's.
No, I'm not going to put you on the spot. But.
Yeah, thanks. But it's I'm just not a big satanic demon whatever person. Like I'm so Jesus all messed up. It's not my thing. Like I don't. Right. It doesn't work. And I'm okay with it though. I respect it, but I don't want to.
It's not you.
Exactly. It's just not me. It doesn't work with me. Like, I would wear that and people would be like, oh, really? So, yeah, so it doesn't work. But at least I got to, just support and stuff like that. And it creates this amazing feeling for the fans of just, it's weird, but you feel like it creates this amazing relationship of like, you support the band, you root for them, you want them to succeed, and they give you everything they have live. So it's like, you mentioned like your van was on fire and stuff like that, and you still make it. But on the other way, I'm sure a lot of your fans, maybe things happen and they still made it because it was important to see you guys. So I feel like it creates this on both ends. It creates this, bond and this. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're all on the same team, and all that support just makes a huge difference. So those guys may have not made a dime that night, and you put towards that, to make it to the next show. So I mean, it's just like little things like that. Like I said, it makes a huge difference, especially on the road, and up and coming bands as well.
And I have a weird, because I know Dom is going to have like a lot of specific, amazing questions. Mine are just weird most of the time. But like the question I would have is, we were talking about your logo before starting, and, we noticed that it's not the usual deathcore, death metal, whatever aesthetic. Like to me, it's almost looks a little more hardcore, metalcore and stuff like that. Like, do you remember, like, I know it's, vague as a term, but like, it's not the classic deathcore whatever logo.
It's readable. We'll put it that way.
There you go. Yeah. So
legible.
Do you remember like if it's just like you thought it was cool like that, or it was a conscious decision of like, let's make it readable as opposed to her peers making it like all broken up and stuff? Just curious.
That's a good question. Which logo? We have two logos. So we have one that was like the original.
Both are pretty legible, though. I mean, it's kind of like
they're both very legible. One has the hand claw.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
But the
one
more
square version, and then
exactly, and that one could, I guess, be like hardcore-ish, but the one after was designed by Paul Romano, and we call that one our Malice logo, and it's kind of one we use, and have been using since then. But when we do throwbacks and stuff, we'll go to that one with the hand. The reason we stopped using the one is because we didn't want to get sued. I think like Shaun of the Dead or something like that.
That's what I was gonna say.
Had like the hand, but the newer one Paul Romano made, and it for some reason we just started using that. We like that one, but yeah, it's definitely not deathcore, death metal. It's very like I don't know, real unorthodox compared to a lot of bands that are similar to us. I dig it. It doesn't fit with everything. Actually, I think it might be. Are you talking about this guy?
Hey, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if
That's
you can
awesome.
see that.
No, honestly, I think like we were talking about that. Like, I think it's sometimes a good way to distance yourself and make it, different. Because if, let's be real, there's a lot of logos out there that if I put it on a flyer, you're gonna wonder which one is like. They all look like the same thing. So I think it's cool to distance yourself. And personally, I love the hardcore aesthetic and stuff like that. Like it's not really hardcore, but the example I have right now is Acacia Strain. Like, I think they're awesome, and it's like one of my favorite things.
More of a legible thing too, yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of where my brain went when I said like look more hardcore. I had kind of this style.
I totally understand what you're saying now. Yeah, I could totally see that, and Paul Romano may have made their logo as well, so that might be why they are like similar. Because we both used him on the records, when we were with Prosthetic. Yeah, so that might be, you might have put that together.
Oh, there you go. So my brain was like, for once, it was just weird. It was logic. So
nah, you're onto something.
But it's cool, and it does make sense at the same time, because if we're honest, there's a big hardcore vibes. Like if we're talking about breakdowns, if we're talking about like two-step, like there's a hardcore vibe within the scene and within what we hear. So it does make sense to go in that direction as well. Like it's a mix of metal, death metal, and also hardcore and stuff. So you can go on both sides. So it does make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And to speak on the the logo itself, we always wanted something legible. I think the part of the logo is the branding, and you want to know who you're seeing, because there's sometimes like I see it and it's like I guess I'm just really old. I don't know, man. It's like and then I'll be like, oh, okay, I see it now. That's sick. But
cool aesthetic. We were talking about this before. Cool aesthetic, but sometimes just not the most marketable thing.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, we're not trying to be the most marketable thing, but I think having a legible logo helps, in certain aspects. But yeah, I mean, I still dig that kind of stuff too, though. There's a record label that I just started. It's called Skepsis Recordings, and it has a death metal kind of logo like that. So my wife actually gives me a ton of shit about it because she's like, you can't fucking read that thing. It's like,
I say, hey, you had your time with the legible logo already.
Exactly.
You can expand. You can do something else. Yeah.
There you go. But like,
I'm trying to be young again.
Yeah, there we go.
It's totally fine. Cool. But yeah, I remember back then, I thought it had the aesthetic of like a horror movie title also. Like that's kind of where my brain went at the same time. So that's because of the name also, right? Like Through the Eyes of the Dead. Like I had this amazing like horror zombie movie, whatever in my mind. So it's honestly,
it had the zombie, the zombie music video and all that. So,
it
makes
works.
Sense.
Yeah. And that's always been kind of the vibe too. So yeah, I mean, we've always tried to be a little different, the mixture of all this stuff too, and kind of stand out a little bit, with the similar bands in the genre.
Sorry, I'm going to end with that.
But go for it.
It was like, I was also going through your flyers and all the bands you play. It's wild. Like, I mean, freaking bands like Suffocation and stuff like it's wild. The amount of amazing, bands you were going with. And I guess the question I would like to ask before moving on is what would be the band that if you remember, like the band that you couldn't believe it that you're touring with them, like an idol or someone you were like, oh my god, I went to road with these guys. Like, did that ever happen to you? Do you recall like?
Yeah, a couple things come to mind. So when we released Bloodlust in 2005, I remember we went from touring with more of like regional bands and things like that. And when we signed with Prosthetic, we were going to tour with Crowbar in Europe. Something happened, but I was just like, oh my God, Crowbar? Like, you got to be kidding me. Like, in Europe? Yeah, sign me up. So something happened. The whole tour got canceled. If you actually look, there's I came across a flyer recently of that. It was Crowbar and Willhaven. Super odd tour for us to be on, but it got canceled. Anyway, I remember them saying, all right, we'll work on something else. And we had just gotten a larger booking agent at the time, and everything was so new and fresh. And we ended up getting this tour with Chimera and Children of Bodom.
Ooh.
And and there were some dates with God Forbid as well. And I was just like,
back in those days, especially, right? Like for context as well, like those bands were at their peak around that time, you know?
Yeah, this is like 05, 06. And I remember that. And just, I don't even think we really said much to those guys at all. We were just kind of like, just hanging around, like, I really want to hang out with these guys, but I don't know what to say. Like, but watching them was really cool. And that's when we first started seeing like, all right, cool, you can like make a career out of this. So eye on the prize. But I will say what really struck me, is when we did Sounds of the Underground in 2006. Sorry, I'm really bad with years.
This
but
thing
I think
is
it was 06.
Yeah, 06. Yeah. Dude, this thing is insane.
You had the flyers
That's
before
legendary.
you mentioned it, right?
Yeah. Because I mean, there's no way it's not this. Like, come on, what a lineup!
This Cannibal Corpse. Seeing them every day, that was like, am I real? Like, is this happening? Like, I'm done. Like, we could do this tour and we're good. I can go get like a real job now. And
I made it. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
With the thing you'll brag about for the rest of your life type thing.
In Flames Trivium, dude, what the hell?
So I recall them, our booking agent saying, oh, well, there's going to be some off dates. And we're trying to put that together. And then we get this, the call, and it's like, hey, like your off dates will be with In Flames and Cannibal Corpse. It's like,
okay.
What? I was like, I don't think we deserve that. Like, are you sure? Like, us?
Is that a mistake? Like,
So, but yeah, man, it was wild. And Black Dahlia Murderer were one of my favorite bands too. And like, all the bands on that, I mean, they were all great. And it was just like really eye opening to see, that side of things so early on.
That level of touring and that level of production and what goes on to like, especially like a festival thing like that, like a moving festival type, like rig and all that.
And it was like, other than it was really hot, really hot. We had no AC. Like, it was like, we did it in a van and trailer. And like, apparently we didn't know that most bands don't do it in a van and trailer, like those big festival tours, like their labels would buy them a bus, or they would share a bus with someone, or but there are only a handful of bands on there that actually did the van and trailer. And I just remember, it just being really, really fucking hot, and long drives. We had load ins at like 9 a.m.
That's why they don't do the van and trailer. It's the drives. Like you gotta get going, and you're not sleeping
during the show.
Night.
Yeah, we would leave during the show. Like we wouldn't even make it, for In Flames or Esley Dying. We'd have to leave, and all bummed out. Some of us all wasted, drunk, and just like, no, I don't want to leave. But yeah, we would have to leave and get there super early, and it was exhausting. But you get over it once you play, because we were playing at like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the day, like super early. And I mean, there were still a lot of people there,
Yeah.
believe it or not. But yeah, that was a big learning experience, and that separated us from just being a local or regional act to like seeing how it was touring professionally.
Yeah, I wanted to ask that because I'm sure you had like this question as well, right? Like with all the bands that they toured, like I'm guessing you wanted to ask that as well. But like that's a question I love. I love asking because, as I said, it's so much work that like when you got a moment like that, like just a little, you get to see people like, I mean, Cannibal Corpse. I mean, forgot like Corpse Grinder and stuff like that's legendary for sure. Like I don't see any bands being just like, oh, okay. Like I mean, for sure. Like you're like, what's going on? And it's these moments like that probably helps a band going as well, right? Like these milestones, just you're like, okay, we're doing something right. Let's do it. So
exactly, yeah, it was definitely a driving force, for myself and the band, and we just, I think it just kept us going, like you said, and it
You guys
just
toured
helps the morale.
nonstop after that, right? Like you guys did a few years of nonstop touring.
Absolutely.
That, basically.
50,000 flyers and like with big bands too. I mean, within, deathcore and like in the prime, like if we remember back in 2007, 8 stuff, I remember right now seeing you guys on tons of sick tours and stuff like that. You were right in the middle of the scene. So it was,
Yeah, it was wild too, because we saw ourselves as like more of a death metal band, but we knew that we had a ton of elements of like the Swedish scene and things like that, but then we also had a little bit of the hardcore thing going on, which was cool because we could tour with like a Cannibal Corpse, but then tour with an As I Lay Dying.
True.
And those bands are very different. Like, I mean, like Haste Today, As I Lay Dying on this tour and All That Remains, but then we're touring with Suffocation and the Faceless and, Decrepit Birth and those bands. And it was like pretty cool that we were able to do that, those kind of tours and kind of mix it up a bit.
You toured also that's what I meant. Like it's awesome to be kind of in the middle. Like the Faceless was awesome too. Like I remember that, like they were everywhere and stuff. Like that's an OG. We were talking about it. I'm like, yeah, they were awesome. But yeah, I think it's cool that you were right in the middle of, it was one big scene, right? Like me and Dom keep talking about it. It was kind of one big, like for a while it was all kind of blended.
Okay, here's where I differ though. I think it was pretty wild because we're talking like 2005, 2006, 2007. Right. Deathcore wasn't really like a thing, right? Like Through the Eyes of the Dead comes out. Deathcore isn't even a word, right? Like it's
darling, but it's not even.
I feel like I feel like we started getting coined as deathcore early on, though. It just wasn't a thing, like it is, especially now.
And then when it became a thing, it wasn't inherently a positive thing when it came to the other scenes. So that's where I found it super interesting to go back and to look at some of these old flyers and to see you guys touring with some of these other bands that are outside of deathcore and death metal, just on the fact alone that other deathcore bands weren't doing those shows, weren't doing those types of tours. Like saw like Suicide Silence and Job for a Cowboy were like the first, I can't even say the first because Through the Eyes were doing it first, but like those are the types of bands that kind of broke out and started doing like tours with Cannibal Corpse and stuff like that, right? But from like a deathcore point of view, like those kind of tours were like super few and far between. And honestly, we saw it from bands that were kind of similar to you guys, like Black Dahlia Murder were like in that same kind of like in between, where like they weren't a deathcore band, but deathcore fans loved Black Dahlia Murder. Like it was adjacent enough in a way that like, and I think you guys were even more like in that deathcore realm because they had breakdowns at least compared to Black Dahlia Murder, right? Like, but that Swedish metal, like that at the gates type vibe is something that resonated with a lot of deathcore fans. And like a lot of the early deathcore was like super melodic. It was like heavier melodic metalcore, basically, like the A Different Breed of Killer and like From the Shallows, but Belay My Last, stuff like that. Like it was all super melodic, and that kind of went away really quick. But
and that's what you like a lot too, Dom. Like Dom really loves like Black Dahlia and all that. Like that's his. Yeah,
I love all that stuff. But yeah, I'd be curious actually, like kind of like your relationship with even just like the word deathcore, like because it was such a, for a time, like a a naughty word for what it's worth, right? And I know, like, looking through a lot of your stuff, you guys weren't necessarily even calling yourselves like deathcore. Like, there wasn't like a mention of the term deathcore. Was that like a conscious decision to like steer away from that? I know your guys' influences weren't from deathcore anyways, but you know, you guys knew you guys were lumped in with that crowd anyways, right? Like, how did you guys see it at that time?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Sorry, long-winded way of asking a question.
No. Yeah. Yeah. So like, I remember seeing it on like Lamb Goat and stuff like that. And I was just, I remember being, you know, just very put off by death. Oh, we're not deathcore, we're death metal, you know, like, and it's like, we really weren't death metal though.
Yeah.
But in my head, I was like, I wanted to kind of go towards the death metal, you know, realm. Cause a lot of us, we were really influenced by death metal. But we also loved, you know, like the slam parts and things like that. And, you know, but I think growing up more, cause the band started in South Carolina. There wasn't a ton around. And when we were, you know, coming up, a lot of the bands around, like there were more bands in like the North Carolina scene. I remember, you know, there was a band called Aria that we did some shows with, you know, and I think that was around the time, you know, with Glass Casket was breaking out, and I'm trying to remember, you know, from back then, but a lot of it was metalcore. So like
the East Coast, like Poison the Well type stuff.
Yeah. And you know, there's a band called The Classic Struggle from South Carolina who are great. And I used to actually, I remember like seeing them live, and playing shows with them locally and being like, they're so much better than us, man. We really got to step up our game. But I don't know if, I feel like that's a band that, you know, hasn't really, you know, they don't come up as much as they should. So if anyone's listening, like definitely check out The Classic Struggle, because that stuff was awesome. But yeah, I mean, basically when we were coming up, it was called metalcore. You know, if you had breakdowns and played metal, it was metalcore. But then I think, you know, bands like us, when we had that big death metal influence, it kind of started evolving, and it wasn't like, I don't think it was like an intentional thing. It just, we just went with our influences and was like, all right, cool. I like, and I think like August Burns Red, and you know, that would be in my head like a metalcore band. So sure, like 100%. I was like, and I was like, we're not really like that. So we're not really metalcore. We really like death metal, and we're a little more brutal. But we're not deathcore. So I was like, I don't know what we are. And then it was like, I remember the label like really pushing us to be like this like Cannibal Corpse kind of band. And I think that kind of got in my head and as well. And I always did want to be, you know, more death metal the whole time, but there's always that melodic element that I just gravitate towards. And I always wanted someone to be able to hum, you know, a melody, you know, and have something catchy. But I also love, you know, just brutal, you know, shit. And I know that live, it's such a, you know, a big thing for a lot of bands and a lot of fans, you know, to see, you know, a band that, but we never really like, I know I'm trailing off here, but we never really like intended. It just kind of happened just from all these, the culmination of all the influences.
You guys weren't saying we need one breakdown every single song. Like, that wasn't
it just felt right. But I mean, we were influenced. And I remember, I think we were on this website, and I feel like this was like pre-MySpace days, and it was this, or it might have been like right around, you know, when that started.
Hardcore MP3, like
that HXC MP3. And I remember when we first got on that, dude, and we were like on the front page. I thought I made it, and I was like, dude, this is so sick. And I remember All Shall Perish being on there, and I remember them. Like I was just blown away by that band because they were very brutal death metal, but had these hardcore parts too. Yeah. And I kind of was like, that's kind of what I want to go and do. And we sound very different from them. But I do remember
but very clear death metal influences as well, right?
Absolutely. And I remember being influenced by that too. And it's like, okay, I think I finally kind of found, you know, how I want to take this, but, you know, still keeping it, you know, with our melodic At the Gates and Darkane and all the thrashier bands too that we liked. And I think that really kind of was like the roots of it all.
I love that you said, by the way, a little bit. You mentioned August Burns Red, right? Like, to me, when I hear like metalcore, for me also it's old August Burns Red, like old Parkway Drive, maybe stuff like that. The song 2 inches something like
2 inches
2 inches from
Okay.
the main artery.
main artery.
with
Yeah.
like the snare and everything. It reminds me a little bit of August Burns Red kind of breakdowns, like super. So like I thought you were about to mention that you love those kinds of breakdowns, but like that's my brain went there as well. Like it reminds me of that vibe of like, you know, the snare preparation and the big moshing breakdowns.
Yeah, breakdown like build up, you know, which we
Yeah.
don't really have
Yeah.
anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even. I mean, obviously that wasn't really the influence from that one. But I could totally see that now because they did a lot of that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
But I wasn't listening to a ton of that stuff back then. I do remember I had a buddy. We had like access to this like FTP server, and he would always just drop tons of music on there. And I know
Yeah.
August Burns Red and all that kind of stuff. You know, got thrown on there. So we had these hard drives full of stuff trying to download on these 56K modems and.
Like soul seek,
brutal.
like type
Yeah,
thing, like the
exactly.
peer to peer, like yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's how we discovered music, man. Especially like in our area, we didn't have much shows. We had like very small venues, and if we wanted to play anywhere, we had to drive a good hour or 2 hours just to, play somewhere decent at least. But yeah, we had this like local spot called the Cootie Hut, and it was like this VFW,
Yeah.
and we actually, I don't know if you guys, there's this band called Arsis. We dragged them to the Cootie Hut once.
Okay.
And they played there, but yeah, it was this VFW, and that was our thing. And it was very, it was very redneck and in the woods, and you can just imagine.
Yeah. A real tough guy show.
Yes.
I'd be curious, like on the topic of like, not really being deathcore, being death metal influenced, but also like we were talking about playing these very diverse. I guess some of the bills were diverse, like themselves. Like a single like tour like lineup was super diverse. But it's fair to say that like some tours you guys were doing were like more of a deathcore tour, sometimes more a death metal tour, sometimes more like a more classic like metalcore tour. Like what would you say would have been the differences for you guys playing those different types of shows? Like do you have any recollection of like preferring certain genres of tours more than any other, like from like a fan reception or like how people even maybe like acted at shows and stuff like that? Would you have any recollection from those days?
No, I mean, we always tried to adapt to whatever tour. We would try to change the set list because, I felt like we had such a catalog that was pretty diverse that we would kind of, try and fit in, I guess, a little more. And I feel like a lot of bands are like that.
Yeah.
I don't think we really, I think we preferred, it's tough. I think everyone was different in the band, and I can't really speak for everyone, but me personally, I think, there were like we would play. We had a tour with Terror and Death Before Dishonor.
Yeah,
and
you guys played a bunch with Terror, right?
Yeah, and it was like it doesn't like on paper it doesn't really look like it would work, but it worked really well, surprisingly. And we would pull out certain songs for those kind of runs, and obviously we would hold back on the songs with just straight blasting for 5 minutes. But I don't know. It's hard to say if we really preferred. I know that we really liked the higher profile tours because we ate very well, and as bad as that sounds,
Sure.
but yeah, bigger venues, air conditioning was always awesome. That was a preference. But as far as like the style, we just fit in and made the best of it, I feel. Obviously the festival tours were really cool, but hardcore, metalcore, deathcore, death metal, it all like we always, just kind of, made the best of it. And we always liked most of those tours. I can only really think of like one tour where we were all miserable, and that's about it.
But did you ever feel like, you know, when you were more maybe branded towards deathcore and metalcore, did you ever feel from the death metal scene kind of a resistance, or you never felt that on tour, like from some fan? Did that ever happen, or?
Not as much. No, surprisingly, because I always did go into certain tours thinking like, man, these, you know, this crowd's not gonna like us. I recall thinking like the Suffocation run that we did in like 2010, 2011. I recall that one, but I was like, well, we have the Faceless, and you know, they have like, but I felt like they fit in better than we did. So, and I guess when we, you know, we did stuff with that As Lay Dying All That Remains tour. I mean, that's a huge tour, and I guess even if we did get some backlash from certain fans, I mean, there were so many people there that they were just wanting to hear heavy music, and if it was loud and heavy, they were cool with it regardless. So I don't think that really happened too much over the years. Luckily, we're definitely lucky in that regard. But yeah, I mean, we didn't really see much of that.
Awesome. Yeah, because it was a thing, right? Back then, like sometimes you were, but I think what helps is, as Dom said before, you had so many different elements. Like you were not the typical over the top deathcore metalcore. Like you were more, you said like more of a death metal with strong hardcore parts. Maybe I would say like it was more like that. So
I think most people probably saw it as more of a death metal band, but it just so happened that the deathcore kids liked the style as well, but that didn't inherently brand you guys as necessarily a deathcore band per se.
Right.
But
respected on both sides kind of thing. I feel like death metal fans were like, that's cool, and deathcore were like, that's cool. So like you were in the middle, but like, you know, it was working.
Yeah, and I think when that genre really started, you know, popping off, I think we were kind of getting towards the you know, to the point where we kind of wanted to do a hiatus, and we were kind of left, you know, in the dust almost. So because I remember seeing like bands like Chelsea Grin and I remember we did a tour with them, and
opened,
you know,
a tour with you guys.
They were opening, and and I was thinking like, man, these guys are really sick. I never knew, you know, that they would really pop off like they did. And it was awesome seeing that, you know, and cause we were really good friends with those guys. But you know, I mean, some of the members, you know, have been replaced or left or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it was really cool seeing them, and a lot of those bands, like
the Montreal bands, man, the Despised Icon, Beneath the Massacre, man. Like Despised fucking blew the fuck up, right? Like,
so it's funny. I see, anytime I do read about this stuff, which isn't often, but sometimes I will like kind of dive in and, you know, see what's going on. I do see sometimes when people are like, who was the first deathcore band? And it's like Through the Eyes or Despised or All Shall Perish, or then, you know, people got their, you know, all views on it. And Despised come up a lot there, and we have a big history with Despised. You know, we did a ton of touring early on with Despised Icon and Animosity and, you know, bands like that. And I lost count how many times we played with Despised Icon. And I think, you know, they were always way more like deathcore than us, you know, back then.
Yeah.
But it was really cool seeing those guys take off too, as well.
Yeah, like Despised Icon. Every single time, like I made a video and I called it like Despised Icon Story, and I called them pioneers, right? Because they are like, they're part of it. Every single time I do something like that, there's like 50,000 comments of people being like, in 1992, this band was there. And so, and I'm like, okay, like it's part of it. But like, I keep mentioning that the Doom EP from Job for a Cowboy was a big milestone for deathcore. Like it kind of make it blow.
Yeah.
And people are always telling me, yeah, but people were doing it before. I'm like, I know, I'm just talking about like it, the kind of, they were part of the start still, but like people really are very passionate about these things. Like, no, but Animosity and this band and this other band and this what's the other one? Antagony, I think the name was there very early on.
That's the one that gets thrown out by the mega nerds. That's for sure.
Yeah, like I see.
Not saying it doesn't have merit, just like that's like the because that's they never like blew up, so it's like super fucking niche to mention, right? But that's usually the band people will go to.
I feel like Despised Icon are seen as like this, you know, like I was watching like Phil Bozeman in Whitechapel talking about, and he considered them as like the godfathers of deathcore and stuff like that. Like I feel like Despised Icon now are getting even more credit than back then. Like people are just like, they've been around forever. Or deathcore, but
it's more black and white, right? Like the stark difference between the hardcore and the death metal in Despised Icon was way more obvious than, for example, a band like Through the Eyes of the Dead, right? So I think it's a lot easier to like kind of like envision that as being like pioneering in that sense, you know? Because
that's the weird thing about Despised. I could throw you a song, like a part of a song, and you think it's death metal, and then I throw you another part, it's hardcore. It's like it's two world blending in, and like you go in these two, and they're master at, like, it sounds great, it works, but it's so different, and with both vocalists, right? One's more hardcore, one's more like it works. But in my mind, since I've been documenting everything, like it takes always more than one band to start something. So like if like Elysia get mentioned a lot because they were very early on also, I think it was like 2004, something like that. And like, obviously you guys are part of it, Animosity. So like, obviously there's more, like Jump for a Cowboy were also early on. So it's like, but it's funny because every time I say the word pioneer, people are like, no, that's not them. That's not them. I'm like,
yeah, you're just opening a can of worms there. Yes. But from what you were saying about Despise, you hit the nail. Like they definitely were able to blend those two styles like perfectly. I don't know if anyone can do it as good as they did or still doing. Dude, it's crazy.
I don't think
in Canada, like quick aside, like in Canada specifically, and I know this is probably a thing elsewhere too, but dude, the amount of bands here that had two, like local, like regional bands that had two vocalists strictly because of the influence of Despised Icon. Yet I have yet to hear a single band actually sound like Despised Icon.
Never heard
right?
that.
Like,
Never.
I've never heard a band sound like Despised Icon.
Not close. Not close.
Yeah, there's something magical crazy going on there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So something in the water.
They have their vibe, and let's be real. Also, their freaking drummer. Like, I don't understand how that guy. Like, it's impossible. Like, it's. I mean, it's almost like you're almost skeptical. Like, how can you even? And I've seen them live, honestly, and I'm like. They
play faster live. It's stupid. They don't play to a click, and they play MVP like fucking 20 BPM faster than the recording. It's stupid.
And you'll see bands. You'll see bands like that. And I remember it's like that was the thing. It was like, all right, they sound awesome on record, but can they do it live? Yeah. And that was one band that may sound better live doing it. It's pretty wild. But yeah, I mean, a lot of those bands you would see like the drummer and like, you know, he might be playing it, but it was, you know, very light,
super
touch.
Stiff.
But they were just like, just beating the shit out of those drums and just so heavy. It was awesome seeing them. You know, especially like I think we may have toured with them in 2005. I think that might be.
I think so. Yeah.
It was around there. I think it was 2005. I
have an 2006, like early, like Despised you guys and Ed Gain. That was a fucking fucking back name, but yeah.
Yeah. That was awesome.
Number 12 and Animosity had some dates on that tour too. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it was way back when.
and you said that you guys had a great relationship with Despised Icon. Like you guys were, but that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. I remember we did our 2010 release, Skepsis, and that was the first tour. It was like, all right, Despised Icon want to go out with you. So we went right out after recording the record and did a really long tour in the winter. And it was always, you know, great times with those guys because they're always super cool and nice. And, you know, we got along with them very well. And they're hilarious as well. I remember we did Ion Dissonance as well. Yeah. And I felt like we had some kind of bond, with our Canadian brothers.
Hell yeah, brother.
Of course it's cool for us to hear that, right? Like for us also, like the Spice of course are like freaking legends. Like you should see like when they play here, like it's like it's unbelievable, like the amount of like he's trying to talk and people are screaming like they're just, like people are just crazy. They were just like they could do anything, and I think they would,
You can only imagine.
Yeah, we're just like super stoked. So, but it's cool to hear that you guys were like, part of their, I would say, beginning, because it was still early. Like, I mean, they're started in 2002, but well, in 2002
they were before us.
Yeah, but still, they were kind of finding, their sound. Like they were not fully, like I made a video about them. They were not fully locked on deathcore. But when you guys toured with them, they were more on their, on their sound and really what they wanted to do and stuff. So that must have been like a prime era to.
Yeah, I remember hearing, what is it, Consumed by Your Poison?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, it was like a little more like grindcore and a lot of those styles. And I remember being really into like Neuraxis around that time. And then we, did those shows, and it was a little different than what I remembered hearing on the record. And it was like, man, this is like fucking awesome. But yeah, it was, I don't know, I felt like we were just like tour brothers for a while, and we did, I remember after our hiatus, we actually played a festival in Texas, and they were on it and headlined, and they were always just so tight, and it was just always a pleasure.
They age like fine wine. They've gotten better over the years. It's fucking insane.
Yeah, very cool. I gotta hit those guys up. It's been a little while. I'll shoot them a message on like Instagram or something here and there, but yeah, definitely got to catch up with those guys.
Yeah, you were. I caught on to something earlier, and I wanted to kind of get into this. You talked about starting the band and kind of wanting to do it, kind of go all in, right? And you talked about also later on talked about work ethic and how that's important to you. And I need to shout it out, and this will tie into some of the more recent stuff you guys have been doing. The early EPs, the EP and the split that you guys did, which now you've remixed and mastered, that sound really fucking great. That shit slapped back in the day. Like that shit was great and still holds up today. You guys recorded that with Jamie King, right?
Yeah,
originally.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that was like kind of like in his beginnings, like walk me through working with him. I know he's kind of like local to you guys ish, like he's in the state, but like I feel like there was clearly a concerted effort of like having good production, and you guys weren't writing your first songs at that point. Clearly, like it was good songwriting. The riffs were good. The songs were good. I'd love for you to maybe speak a little bit about that kind of going all in mentality and how you guys wrote those first couple songs and albums.
Yeah. So we had a handful of bands. I moved around a lot when I was younger. And I ended up moving to a very small town called Florence, South Carolina. And I met, the original members of Through the Eyes. But we had a handful of bands that just kind of didn't really go too many places. But I remember, we basically, I remember being really into like Between the Buried and Me, in their early stages.
He did those. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I'm pretty sure he did like all the Prayer for Cleansing stuff. And he did a lot of like the Tribunal records, like, cause I was obsessed with a lot of those bands back in the day. I remember, a band Heart Scarved and, all these bands that were coming out on Tribunal. Animosity was on Tribunal. But he did a lot of those records, and I was like, man, we definitely got to go to Jamie King. He's not too far. We don't have to, go out to, California to record with this person or Andy Sneap in, England or anything like that. So we really liked what he was doing. So we kind of, I think we decided, like, instead of full length, let's just do like an EP. And that's where the Scars of Ages, happen. And it was actually, some of those riffs are from, the bands that we were in previously.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, there was a band we were in prior called Tell Her I Said Goodbye.
Yeah.
You could probably find that
Great
stuff.
name, by the way. Yeah.
Really cool.
I had some of that pulled up. Yeah.
But yeah, that featured some members, Through the Eyes, and
This thing right here.
there you go. That's a very metalcore album cover if there ever was one. Even the font. I think I made that like in like paint or something.
That's real.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you might find some. I can't remember if there's any riffs. I don't think there are any Through the Eyes riffs from that. There might be, but there was also like, a band we did. It was called Maggot Christ, which was very Prayer for Cleansing ish. But that was a band that was already like established, and I kind of joined that band.
Okay.
Anyways, a lot of back and forth, changing members here and there, and then Through the Eyes was born, and we kind of found our sound, with the Scars of Ages, and we went with Jamie King, and he was just taking North Carolina by the storm, and it was just awesome. But yeah, I think we have a lot to owe to him as well for getting us to sound that way, because we could have, gone, somewhere local and,
most people would have, right? Like, I think you guys were super young. I'm sure you guys didn't have a crazy amount of budget to do these. Like, obviously that's where the EP instead of a full length kind of comes in, but still, right? Like, I think most bands don't necessarily bet that big on a first album, right?
Yeah, and he was always willing to work with us, and to this day he's that way, man. He's always been really cool. Very good to us and very good to the scene in general. And he's awesome on top of that. Like, he's, it's not just like some hack that's like, yeah, I'll mix your record. It's cool. Like, just give me a few bucks.
He's going to do it, but he doesn't give a fuck about it ultimately because he's not getting paid enough.
Exactly.
Type thing.
Yeah, but he always takes it very seriously and does, the absolute best, for the record. And it's been like that since day one. So I feel like we owe him a lot. For sounding like that, with our, the way the kick drums sound and stuff like that for around that time, it was cool. But anyways, and then we went back to him for the split that we recorded, which was kind of us discovering a little more or adding a little more of our death metal element, but also adding in a little more hardcore element. And I think that's kind of where we really started getting coined as the deathcore thing, is on there. But yeah, I mean, and then we, obviously we got signed with Prosthetic, and we did the record with Jamie, Bloodlust, the full length, and that's kind of what started it all. And then, after that, we went with Eric Rutan, because the budget was much bigger, and sometimes you want some change, but yeah, dude, it was I don't know. Jamie was just always a pleasure to deal with, as well. And like I said, he remixed and remastered.
Did he still have like all those, like the files and the stems from back then? Like, was he the one who still had those? That's crazy because he could have not, right? so long ago. Well,
it's funny, because I remember when we recorded Malice, I always wanted to re-release that old stuff, and the old stuff was on a small label called Love Lost Records, and they actually had Black Dahlia Murder's first like EP on there. Into the Moat was another band, and Kevin from Love Lost, he was a really great dude, and we ended up getting the rights to the old stuff, and immediately I talked with Prosthetic, the label, and I was like, hey, like I really want to put this stuff out. I have the rights to it now. And a lot of back and forth. I was trying to do an imprint on the label, and it just didn't pan out. I guess both sides just really didn't agree, and we just kind of like laid it to rest or whatever. But I always had this thing in the back of my head, like I really got to release that old stuff, because it was like only available on like YouTube, and and I know a lot of people wanted it, and it was kind of kicking my head for a while. But during the pandemic, Jamie King just went like relentless on just remixing, remastering a lot of band stuff during that time. Okay. And I don't recall us asking him to do that. I think he just, I think he reached out and was like, hey, I'm going to do this. And he ended up doing Bloodlust as well. And we tried to get that released too, but the label didn't want to do it. They didn't want to do it at the time. maybe we'll revisit that at some point and see if they're interested. But yeah, so he just kind of did it and sent it to us, and we're like, all right, well, I guess we got to do stuff with this now. And
That's so cool. And it sounds fucking great. So it's like, must have been cool to get back and be like, whoa, okay, this is like,
yeah,
it's not even just like putting it out again. It's got like a new vibe to it almost, you know?
exactly. And then, the pandemic hit and life was crazy, and no one knew what was going on. And we had these aspirations of doing it, but I kind of was just like, well, I don't even know if the band's going to really do anything. Like, I don't know if I should, try and waste my time or anyone else's time with it, or finding a label to do it. And Steven, our other guitar player, now he's been in the band since like 2013, 2014. And he was considering starting a label. So we kind of were like, why don't we both, put it out on our labels? We'll do a separate thing, because, he has, his, mindset and his aspirations for his label. And I always kind of wanted to do a label, but not, I kind of wanted to do some other things as well with the label. So I was like, this is like perfect opportunity. And, that way, if both of us, put it out, it'll be much easier financially. And, we're both very busy. He has his other band, Wretched, and
amazing band.
Yeah,
I fucking love
yeah.
Wretched, man.
Oh, dude, you got to hear the new stuff.
Don't tell me that. That's such
so
a tease.
good.
Oh no.
You got to hear it.
They haven't put anything out in a while too. Fuck,
dude,
man.
Dude, yeah, it's really awesome. But yeah, we both, his label's called Beyond the Top Records.
Yeah.
And my label's called Skepsis Recordings. So we kind of combined and put it out, and we're learning, and we're working on our next releases, and we'll see what comes of it. But we're pretty stoked on that, and we're kind of, keeping, the music thing, like we're still really heavily involved in music, with he's, I got, Through the Eyes, and he's got Through the Eyes and Wretched, and we got the labels, and it's just really cool to still be older now, and, still being able to, kind of keep everything alive, as far as that goes. So I don't know. It's really cool to, I actually have it here. It's like, this is the CD that,
hell yeah.
Here. But it's like so awesome to, just hold that, and just have it physically here. So,
yeah.
And it's like, wow, we finally did it. I mean, I've been talking about this since like 2007. So
yeah.
But yeah, it's really cool. And I owe a lot to Jamie King, at the end of the day, because he kind of pushed that back out there. It's like, hey,
yeah, I kind of forgot about it. And they're like, oh, hey, ding. Like, hey, do you want to do this thing? Light bulb kind of goes off. That's cool. Yeah. Are you guys thinking about doing like stuff for other bands as well? Or it's kind of just a Through the Eyes thing? What's the plan with that? If you can speak to that.
Yeah, I'm actually in talks with the Classic Struggle right now about releasing their record, Feel Like Hell. We're going to do that on vinyl, and we might do it on CD. And I had mentioned them earlier, and I always liked them. I'm actually surprised that it hasn't been done yet. Jamie actually remixed and remastered their record too.
There we go.
From back in the day. So it all just aligned. And Steven, his label Beyond the Top, they just
done
released
a few other things, right?
Yeah, Abyssal Frost. It's actually his band from North Carolina. They're a little bit more like black metal style. So he put that out on vinyl, and it came out really killer. So we're kind of doing that. And I know there's a lot of labels now that are, just kind of releasing like old stuff, like throwbacks. Which is really cool.
It's the vibe right now. There's a bunch of people doing some cool stuff and kind of shining some light on some older stuff that, there isn't really any way of getting these albums anymore, but people still think about them. They're not on streaming platforms anywhere. They're kind of like, it's kind of niche, but like there's a market for it. Like people are here for it. A lot of collectors out there, like really digging that stuff up.
Yeah, and a lot of those like local North Carolina bands that I was listening to when I was younger that, just completely are just, you don't see any trace of them on the internet or on Spotify or something. It's really cool to see those physical releases like the band Aria. I just bought their record recently, and that band Heart Scarved. And so like all these like underground stuff, releases that really to see the light of day is fucking awesome. So I'm still, for the label, I'm more, I'm not really focused on, that in particular. I mean, that's really
Yeah.
cool. So if there are releases that, definitely need a physical release, and I'm into it, I am fucking definitely, ready to do that. But, I'm just kind of trying to branch out and see how this thing goes. It's not my, my full day job, but, it's more of a passion project. And, it's, I've always just loved physical music. And I think that a lot of people still do love, actual physical media. And, we just want to bring that, back to the forefront as much as possible. We still love streaming, of course, I mean, it's super convenient. But dude, I put on, it was the other day I put on a CD and I actually A-B'd it, in my car. And I had,
no, 100%. Yeah. It's not the same, eh?
And it can get close when you like actually download it and stuff like that, streaming wise, but you start hearing things in like the high end, that are like real compressed on the streaming, and you're kind of sacrificing that quality for the convenience. And I totally get it. And I'm all about that. But, holding, like I said, holding that record and opening the book, and I'm not like trying to like, be a sales guy here, but,
this is a podcast all about you, my friend. You sell what you want, man.
Yeah. I mean, but like, you open it up and it's like the stuff from, when we were coming up, there's like the Children of Bodom flyer there. And, it's just really cool to
reading the thank yous was a ritual of mine. We don't do that anymore.
I know.
I miss having physical, like I'm also like a gamer. I miss having like the physical copies of things. Like it's more special to have something in your hand than like, just like, I understand the era that we're in. I think there's a lot of benefit to it, but like as someone who's like I love having like just I'm the exact person who's gonna read the little booklet. I'm gonna look at it. Same. Like for a game, for music. Like to me, it's the universe around something that I love discovering. It's not only just the music and then the riff. I want to dive in and really look at it. So it's great that it's kind of coming back in that sense. Like I think it's cool.
Yeah, and I feel like you get to know the record a lot more because you're not quick to skip or I'm in the mood for this now, and whereas I think you'll keep
it's disposable. It's like just onto the next
vinyl on or a CD in or cassette or whatever. Like you're kind of like you're there. You're getting the vibe a little more. But everyone's different, and I respect that too. So I'm not discriminating against any of it, but I do love holding that physical, record or whatever.
Has a add-on value. It's different. Like you're connected, at least for me, like I'm connecting to it more. Like I have older generation of consoles, even gaming, like Xbox and the first PlayStation and stuff. Like I love having like, the copies and like looking old booklets and instructions and stuff like it's just I don't know, there's something more as opposed to just downloading a game and you're there and you play. Like it's different. So
yeah, exactly. I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah, I think like to be fair though, I think we're a lot of people feeling this way. Like I hear it more and more that people are missing the physical, and that's probably why the vinyls and all these things are selling as well as they're doing. Like there's definitely other people feeling this way for sure. Like or it wouldn't sell. So
yeah, I didn't think that because we pressed 500 copies of the vinyl, and I didn't think that we would sell many of those. I mean, I knew it would. There would be people interested. But, we're almost out of the second variant. The first variant sold out immediately. And it's just like eye opening. And we're not trying to do this, to be rich or anything, because there's not a ton of money to be made, but it just feels good, that you can kind of give back. I know as cheesy as that sounds, it's I don't know, it's pretty gratifying. And Steven and I, we ship all the stuff ourselves, even the Through the Eyes merch, it's a lot of fucking work, man, but we enjoy it. There are times where I don't want to see anything as far as like shipping boxes and mailers and stuff like that, because we're working full-time jobs and shit. But at the end of the day, it's like, man, like we're still what we set out to do, we're still doing, and there's something to be said about that. It might not be the
And
same
people still
exact thing.
caring, like
Yeah, exactly.
Goes back to what you were saying. Like there's that validation that comes from, it's a sale, like it's like a transaction, but like that means there's interest. Like people are willing to put the money down for something that you made, right?
Yeah, and I love that whole aspect of it. And it's like I feel like we're all a community. And all these Facebook groups and things like that.
Yeah.
It's just really cool seeing that people are still into that stuff and still support it all. And I don't think that will ever go away.
Don't yeah, same. I feel the same way. And by the way, we want to be mindful of your time, but like I would be mad at myself not for asking if I go back in time for a second. We're going back to 2010 because I'm super nostalgic as a person. It's you did the Trash and Burn, right? The 2010 one, and it was like a big like Trash and Burn. I think we all remember it was a big freaking big thing back then. And the lineup was very special. Like it was like Asking Exandria, Impending Doom, like Motionless and White, Chelsea Grin, like all these crazy things. Like, do you have memories? Like, because I remember Asking Exandria were in their freaking prime at that. Like they were like popping off like in the metalcore community and stuff like that. What's your, like, I would be curious to know if you have memories of that specific tour being that you Stick to Your Gun, all those different bands. Like, do you have memories like of that tour?
That was a weird one. Just looking back now too, like that lineup that you just said, like
so wild, right? Yeah.
Periphery before us. What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Motionless and White were like opening, I think, or
super,
yeah. And it was like, to think of that now, it's like, whoa,
wild, right? Yeah.
I it's weird. I've been through a whole lot of shit with this band, and that was a moment in time where I was pretty miserable. And a lot of people look at that and it's like, dude, you haven't made, like, this is like, Thrash and Burn Fest, you're on tour with all these bands. And I recall just like being, just really depressed and just hating everything, hating life, not wanting to do the band anymore. I've been through, a ton of members with the band. If you look at
every album, right?
So it's always been really tough. And I remember when we were like, I feel like at one of our peaks, it was like during the Malice cycle. And I remember when Nate Johnson was leaving the band, and Josh Kulik, who played drums, they both left the band after like one of the biggest tours we did. And I believe that was an As I Lay Dying tour in like December or something. And I was like, it was like living a dream. And then I think I recall it was like right before Christmas, and both of those guys pulled out of the band. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. Like, it just
you guys had to drop out of that following tour, that Throwdown tour afterwards too, right?
I'll get into that in a second. We actually did that tour begrudgingly, but we did not want to do that tour, but we were kind of forced to do that tour. And I'm going way back and trailing off, so apologies.
No, you're good. You're good. Well, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, but I remember that being a huge blow is when Josh and Nate quit the band, because we had just recorded Malice with Eric Rutan, and like, I was just that was the dream, and getting all those big tours and everything lined up, everything just seemed very, and there was a lot of money coming in, but there was even more money coming out. And we were really, young and not really understanding of how to really cope with all that stuff. Like, we had a great manager and stuff like that, but everyone was getting a piece of it. We had trailers break down. We had no idea like how to handle merch or keep a consistent merch guy with, tallies of everything. And we were getting merch overnighted because we were selling, shit so much. And like, overnighting, 20 boxes of merch like adds up. But I was just almost kind of like very careless about that. Like I didn't care. Like, so that was a lot of that stuff was like mismanaged. So I recall like, there being some issues like with money, and, people were like, hey, like, all this money coming in. I'm not seeing any money and things like that. Not those guys specifically, but just in general. And even myself, I was questioning it. Like, there's a lot of
like you see the merch sales and people wearing the shirt. You're like, why aren't I getting any out of it?
Exactly. I remember analyzing it, and it's like, oh well, that's just how it is. And I had that mentality, and I was like, because I you know, I've always been one of the main guys to handle that stuff, you know, along with someone else. But like, I was looking at it, and I was like, when you start, you know, this person's taking this, the lawyer's taking this, you know, this person's taking this, the agent's taking it. And it was like really eye-opening, like, holy fuck, like there is no money for us. And we're the ones out here, you know, blood, sweat, and tears, like just grinding it. And I kind of just got accustomed to it because it was like, all right, well, maybe eventually even more money will come in. And then, you know, but I think some guys were getting, you know, like, you know, just frustrated of not getting paid. And I totally understand. And it's rough. And I just think it was all mismanaged. But yeah, I mean, when those guys, when Nate quit, it was just a really weird situation because I remember it was like, we had gotten it like through an email or something. And it was pretty much like, I don't want to be on, you know, big stages like that. And I just was like super confused. Like it all made sense afterwards.
Isn't that what we're working for? Like, isn't that like,
But then I started thinking like, maybe it's like what I'm working for, but you know, everyone else has their kind of, you know, different mentality. So, and he had, Nate specifically went to join Since the Flood. You know,
like in the same announcement, it was like,
and I was just kind of like, eventually it was like, okay, like, you know, what he said is true. He wants to play, you know, smaller clubs and things like that. He doesn't want to be on the big stage and, you know, and
never has been really since then, right? It's kind of wild to see.
Yeah, I guess not. I know, you know, things got pretty big for Fit for an Autopsy, but I don't think ever got to like,
but he was there super early on. Like when they really broke out, that was past him. Right. And he's working like Pathology and stuff like that. Like they were never either like crazy huge or doing the big ass tours, you know? They did some for sure, but not like, you know.
Not like the level that they're doing things now. Not even near it. But it was just, I think I got tired of that cycle of just like, all right, got to figure out another member. And it was getting frustrating. Than that,
right? You have them on your record, right? Especially a vocalist, right? Like it's like, oh shit, like we're playing live now. We have to sound like this. People are expecting this, but now we don't have the member. Like it's a whole, you know.
Yeah, and you know, Chris Anderson was on the Split all the way to Malice, and then Chris split after that too. And that one I was just like, fuck, man, like what the? And that was before Nate and Josh quit the Malice lineup. And I was just kind of like sitting here like, I can't do this any longer because, you know, we have already had replaced. I mean, even to get on the first actual tour, we had a member quit in the studio right before we were supposed to tour. And it was like, all right, well, I got to figure out someone to play these shows. And we did get someone. And I wish, you know, looking back, like, you know, some people were like, oh, you know, like it didn't sound like the record. And sometimes I'm like, man, like maybe we should have just waited it out. And, you know, like, cause it, you know, we just were trying to rush and just get it done and, you know, get out there. But, and then, you know, Jeff, our original bass player, on our first tour, he ended up, leaving on that tour, and flying home. And we had just been, and actually Jeff is, back with us playing shows, which is crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's cool.
So it's been a wild ride, and I think at that point of our career, going from like, you know, top tier playing with all these crazy you know, professional bands to having to just restart and being pushed on the next tour and just getting some fill-ins, it just didn't sit right. And then I started like, it was almost like a downward spiral for me. Like, you know, like I said earlier, I've had a lot of mental health issues and dealing with that and coping with that my whole life. And it started creeping back in. And being on tour was really hard after that. And after that, like some anxiety that I never had just started creeping back in my life. And I just started hating being in the van and being on the road and thinking like I'm wasting my time because everyone's quitting on me. And I felt like, like I'm sitting here, I felt like I was treating everyone very well. And then they just quit, and it's like, well, what's the fucking point? And in hindsight, like, I guess maybe I was like, moody and, I had my faults. We all do. And, I could have been, grumpier back then. I don't know. But, we live and learn and we grow up and, but at that point, I just felt like, why are these people betraying me? Like, it was just blindsided by the whole thing.
Constantly being stabbed in the back type thing.
Yeah. And so I was just like, fuck it. Well, I guess this is my last tour. And I just that was like my mentality every tour, which kind of brings me into the Throwdown Soilwork tour. And we actually did do that tour. We got kicked off that tour. That was the only tour that we've ever been kicked off of. I actually was talking about this recently to Josh from Trustkill Records. Because Throwdown were at their, one of their peak moments, and they were headlining that. And I was like, Soilwork were like one of my favorite bands growing up. So I was really stoked to play with them.
100% your vibe. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it was like, well, fuck, we got to get some fill-ins or whatever. And then we ended up, we got our original guitar player back and it just didn't work out at the time. We were just in very different places. And we were just kind of rushing things. And then I started getting the vibe that he wasn't feeling it. And we got Lech from As Blood Runs Black. He was playing drums for us. And we had this guy, Lou, who was a killer vocalist. And, I think he had just had a kid or something. And, he was just very stressed out. And being on the road was even more stressful for him. So it was like, I know I'm trailing off again, but it was just like,
you're good. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just like,
everyone had their own shit. And then you with your anxiety, your depression, your things too, just trying to hold it fucking together. You know, like a melting pot of people, like all fucking anxious together.
Yeah. And it was just like, I don't even want to be here now. And we were like, I felt like we were like forced by, some management to like, just get out there and do it. Which from a manager standpoint, get on the road and finish the tour out. Because that's what was our mentality, like I said, from early on, like be relentless, do it no matter what. People are there to see you, show up, fucking play. But
for everyone else, it's the cut that comes into, right?
But I think you get to a point, it gets like, man, like, this isn't working out. But we got kicked off the tour. I won't get into too many details, but there was some really dumb fighting going on in our camp. And I guess one of the guys went on Throwdown's bus and may have said some words, not to them, but to them about us. And it was like a whole fucking thing. And I don't know. It was, and there was a lot of drinking and, just shit like that. So maybe that story will come out eventually. But I just remember there being a water gun and a knife and just a lot of dumb shit. So we got kicked off of that one. Yeah, and I was just kind of like, all right, well, I'm done here. But here I am. But then, we did like the Thrash and Burn, and I remember, not being stoked on that. But looking back now, I'm like, man, that was a killer tour. Born Over Cyrus were on it. And funny you said Asking Alexandria. I was like, I remember seeing that. I was like, who the fuck is Asking? Like, why are they headlining this? Who is this band?
Yeah, they blew up One Shot and they took over.
And I almost thought it was like some kind of facade. Like, is this like a thing where it's like, all right, we're going to give you a ton of money and you're going to headline this. And, nobody
fake it
really
till you make it.
I almost thought that that's what, Sumerian was doing. And little did I know when we got to those shows and we saw their fans, like it was legit. And that was the beginning.
They were clearly there for you, for them, and you could tell they weren't necessarily there for you guys.
So lesson learned. And they were pros. They were pros at it. It wasn't, obviously my cup
during
of tea.
During that era, they were. After they were wild as a band, but it was their prime. It was their prime.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I mean, that was a rude awakening for sure. But yeah, that tour in general, like looking back, it was I mean, the shows were good, but my head wasn't in it, right? And I just didn't want to be there.
And that's the most important, right? Like, I mean, that's what matters. Like, as much as you can be in the best time of your life, if your head is not there, well, it's, you know, no matter how amazing it should be, it still won't, right?
Yeah. And
So-
money was bad. Like, you know, like it was just tough making it. And we did like, you know, a tour around then with OTEP, and it was like a very long tour. It was OTEP and Bury Your Dead, which is a very odd tour to be on.
Special tour, yeah.
Even those two bands toured together was weird.
I know.
Like, such a weird eclectic mix, right?
Yeah, we made the best of it, but that was a rough one. That was a very rough tour as well.
It must be tough also because like a tour itself takes a lot of motivation, a lot of like you're in your head, right? Like you need to be focused and like, okay, it's worth it. So
ideally you're on your A game type thing.
Yeah, but like when you go on a tour and prior to the tour, you're like, ugh, and you're not, you know, like it's not even something that you're stoked on. It's like it makes everything more daunting and difficult, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, we took a little hiatus, and you know, after it was the Suffocation tour, you know,
how was Flesh God on that tour? Because they were in the best material they had was like around that era. Like they were on Oracles and Mafia. That shit was so fucking good. I'm assuming you were maybe in the same kind of headspace, but I never got to see them back then during that era. I would have killed to see them back then.
No, they were killer. I feel like that might have been one of the first times they were in the States.
Probably, yeah.
And I felt like, you know, looking back now, like they tried to bring their production as much as they could within budget. And I think they were the opening band on that tour.
Yeah, they were the opening, yeah.
So, you know, and I'm sure like that was
they're like a made to headline. They like can't do anything else. Like to your point with like production and all that, like it just has to.
Yeah. And they actually did really well. You know, and they did with what they had. They sounded amazing. So I saw from the get-go, like this band is so killer. And you know, that trajectory from there, obviously, but
they blew the fuck up right after that.
Yeah, and it was really cool seeing, you know, that at that time too, because I knew that they were sick just from record, but seeing them live, I was like, okay, this is the real deal.
Yeah.
And then now it's like just beyond that. So
it's insane what they've been doing now, but it changed a lot since then too, right? But I think it's just that's like part of what's brought them to like a whole other level. If they had just kept doing what they were doing on Oracles, it'd be like a big death metal band, but that's kind of it, right? Like I feel like the heights they've reached now with the more like cinematic kind of like symphonic like vibe they have is like just so much. The theatrical vibe with the production and everything is just such a whole other level.
It can reach more different audience as well, right? Like it's makes it a little more accessible. I think when you do something like that. So basically, I'm saying it's smart to do that, but of course it's different. It's smart, but it's different. Yeah,
they're phenomenal musicians. It's wild, but yeah, it was cool seeing that. And that tour was actually very, very good. You know, and I'm pretty sure I want to say
a death metal tour, right? More of a
and that's kind of what we were like really trying to do. If you listen to you know, Skepsis, it's a real raw like more leaning towards death metal, but still keeping like, you know, the same Through the Eyes elements. You know, because that's kind of when we regrouped, and you know, our current drummer Mike, he's still in the band. He's, you know, he's on that record, and that was kind of like the turning point. Even though my head wasn't fully into it, like it was like, you know, getting Mike, and he had a guitar player, Hank, who's not with us anymore, but you know, getting those guys in the band, like kind of turned things around, and, you know, really, you know, to this day, like
actually stuck with the lineup afterwards for the most part. You know,
And our current singer, Danny, he came around those Mike and Danny, especially, like they came in, I think Danny's first tour was with Whitechapel headlining.
Yeah.
So they got to see that, but they also got to see like the Hard Times as well, like, you know, like the OTEP tour and,
Yeah,
you know,
Thrash
those
and
kind
Burn
of
and
things.
yeah.
Yeah. And making, you know, 200, 300 a night, you know, trying to make it, you know, on that. It was, they got to see that, you know, with us. So, they didn't join in the best of, you know,
Right.
our career or
They,
whatever.
they weren't doing it for the money. That's for sure.
No, definitely not. And they're still with me. So, you know, and I love those guys. And the thing is like, looking back now, like I kind of rekindled a lot of relationships with the guys from the original record,
Yeah.
or the original, you know, EP and split, just because, you know, we released it and it's like, hey guys, this is what we're doing. And, you know, it's really cool to kind of go back, you know, and talk to people. Cause like, I feel like, you know, when you're young, you just kind of just go through these growing pains and, you know, it could be the dumbest thing, you know, that someone
Write
gets
someone
pissed
off. Like, fuck it.
Yeah,
Never even thinking about this person anymore. You're like, what was that all about? Like, over this? Like,
I know. And we were just talking about that. And it's just like, you know, and like I said, our original bass player, Jeff, you know, he jammed at Orifest with us and it was fucking awesome. And super stoked to have him, you know, rock some bass with us. But yeah, it's just really cool to kind of go back and, you know, rekindle those friendships and, you know, catch up, and everyone has kids and we're all old and jobs and, you know, but
everyone's
we're still,
back hurts and
exactly. But it's, I don't know, it's pretty cool. And you know, the band has definitely afforded me, you know, a lot of cool little luxuries in that aspect. And, you know, I'm super grateful for, you know, still being able to do this, and still have people interested.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool, man. Yo, I mean, I think that's like a great way to kind of cap it, man. That was super cool, man. I'm really, I know you felt as though you were kind of drifting off near the end there and going roundabout ways to say things, but I thought that was super fucking interesting.
To be honest, that's what we like. Cool. Like if I'm honest, that's exactly like,
if you're not rambling, we're rambling. So
yeah. And
we rather you do it.
No one wants me rambling in general. So my channel is there for that. But like, no, but like all these things are extremely important. And one of the things we love the most is to hear like insider perspective, like how you felt when you were doing these things, because that's the kind of things that people they can't possibly know. And they, you know, they have no idea. And it helps to give some perspective of like what your favorite musicians were going through during that era, that album that you love, that, you know, period of time that you have a vision of your band and how it seems. Like when I was 15, in my mind, all the deathcore bands were millionaires somehow. And you know, reality teach me that it wasn't that, not even close. And, you know, it gives perspective, and it makes you respect them even more, knowing what they went through. And like anxiety and mental health, those are very real. And I think a lot of people can relate, including me. So I wanted to say thanks for sharing that as well, because it's not like we need to talk about those things. I feel like the more we talk about it, the more people feel better and share about these things, right? So thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, and thank you guys for doing this. I mean, it's really cool, this whole you know, throwback kind of thing you got going on. I love it. And I think it really gives back to the community as far as that goes. And it seems like people really dig this. So, yeah, it's, you know, people like you, like keeping this alive as well. So I love that. And thank you.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate that, man. Yeah,
really appreciate. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Do you have anything you want to shout out? Anything that's coming up? Maybe Skepsis or anything you guys got going on with the band, or shout out your socials. The floor is yours.
Cool. I always hate these things, so bear with me. All right, cool. So we're writing Through the Eyes of the Dead is writing a new record right now. It's gonna most likely be an EP. And we are going to be paying a lot of homage to early death metal, kind of the roots. So it's still going to sound like us, obviously, because, you know, it is us. But, you know, we kind of are going back to, the bands that really influenced us, just like I said, from the roots of everything. So a lot of the early 90s stuff like Morbid Angel and Death and Cannibal Corpse, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So this one's going to be a little more raw. And I don't want to give too much away, but our vocalist, Danny, and I, we've actually already have like a lot of lyrics and a lot of the concepts and stories that we're going to kind of tie in to Skepsis and to Somas. But a lot of this stuff really ties in together. And we don't have we have some music written, but we don't have a ton of music written. So this is going to be the first time where we're actually working off of a concept with
from the get-go, like prior. Yeah.
I mean, he has like two or three songs lyrics written that are like they look like they're complete. So it's going to be cool because I can base the music off of that, and Steven, Steven's going to be coming in and he was on our last record to Somas, but I don't feel like he really got to shine of what he's capable of. So I'm super excited to have him.
More of a collaborative thing on this one.
Exactly. And Mike's just been getting better and better over the years. Like he was already sick when we got him, and he's even sicker now. So I don't know. I'm just really excited for this because it's a very different approach than what we're used to. And like I said, having the collaborative thing with Steven and having his his guitar style and songwriting abilities is just gonna really take it that next level. So stoked on that. Hopefully that's out maybe summer, fall. We are working on, label wise, Steven and I, Skepsis Recordings and Beyond the Top Records, we're gonna be working on another very cool release together that people will be stoked on. It's from our catalog, Through the Eyes catalog. So
cool.
Yeah, it's going to be a nice thing for the fans. So that's being worked on. After that, we're going to play a bunch of shows and hopefully get out there more and just keep doing it like we always have.
Awesome.
There we go. Hell yeah, man. Well, I'm super excited for all of that.
Yeah.
And thanks again for sharing like you did and coming on and taking the time to do this. So we were saying before the show, accepting to do a podcast with two white dudes that have a podcast, two white dudes in their 30s doing a podcast. Yeah, it's like everyone's that nowadays. So thank you for trusting and for wanting to do this with us.
Dude, really, you guys are great. And this is actually, I've always actually wanted to do something like a podcast, but I just don't have the guts to do it. So respect to you guys, because this is fucking awesome.
Thanks, man.
Hell
yeah. You do it very well.
Thank you very much.
Man. We appreciate it so much, man.
Coming from you, it's awesome. Thank you, man.
Fuck yeah.
All right. Well, we'll catch you soon. We'll keep talking. Okay. Keep in touch.
You too. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, man. Peace out.
Later.
Take care, man.